Hi everyone. Today we will explore the role of ethics in psychology and provide an overview on why ethics is essential for both professionals and the public. First, we will introduce the Code of Ethics in Psychology, which provides foundation guidelines for professional conduct. Second, we will discuss the challenges faced by clinical psychologists, highlighted through an interview session. Lastly, we will share the public response on perception of ethics in psychology. Our ultimate goal is to build self-awareness of values and attitudes that guide psychologists. The Code of Ethics is designed to protect client welfare, establish appropriate professional boundaries, and ensure practice within an ethical and legal framework. By understanding these principles, we can see clearly why ethics matter to both professionals and society. The Ethic Code provides a common set of principles and standards upon which psychologists build their professional and scientific work. It reflects in the behavior of protecting welfare of the clients, understand and respect the cultural values of clients, maintaining professional boundaries, protecting client confidentiality and privacy, and avoiding discrimination during providing services to the client. Why is this ethic code important? The Code of Ethics is important in psychology because it provides a clear framework to maintain high standards for integrity and responsibility in professional practice. It is a protection for clients by the defense of their rights, welfare, and dignity. It supports that decisions are made with responsibility and care, and ultimately it does no harm and is good for the client. Following clear principles also serves to prevent misconduct and resolve ethical dilemmas, and to increase public trust in psychology as a discipline and profession. In this segment, we hear directly from clinical psychologists across different fields. They share their perspectives on the ethical challenges they face in daily practice, and how the Code of Ethics guides their decisions and professional conduct.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Ngui. I am a clinical psychologist currently at Sunway Medical Center, Bandar Sunway.
My name is Teo Shun Yi. I am a clinical psychologist. I've worked with adults working in corporate settings. I've worked with athletes. I've worked with children.
My name is Ethel Ding. I am currently in the States and I am outpatient therapist at a foster care agency. Because my training is in clinical mental health counseling, I can actually do the job of a clinical psychologist and diagnose and treat.
What does intake look like? And in terms of where you have to weigh ethical concerns or just be mindful because of the situation.
The intake session looks like just doing a whole bunch of assessments. Ethics does come into that because you want to make sure you assess the whole person, right? So that you can treat them. First of all, so you can know that you can treat them. Because if something is not because of psychosocial emotional distress and it's actually a physical concern, then what you're doing in therapy isn't really going to help. You're not addressing the whole person.
In regards to competence, that would be explained as whether myself as the psychologist, am I trained and competent in delivering therapy or doing assessments for specific groups or a specific condition. So I would explain it as, for example, if a psychologist has not worked with children before, it would be unethical to start taking on children cases when you start working because you've not been trained and you wouldn't understand the population as well as how to deliver competent services to this population. And in regards to therapy, it would be knowing which approach that you are familiar with. So currently, most psychologists would practice CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. Some would be also offering acceptance and commitment therapy or emotion-focused therapy or dialectical behavior therapy. So I believe that as practitioners, you need to be competent in the skills that you're delivering, whether it's assessment or therapy, before you offer it to others.
Another professional challenge that I experienced quite a lot, especially during my early days as a trainee, is managing biases. And now that is one thing that is quite normal. That's one thing. But it's very important for us to stay objective during sessions while we are talking to our clients. So even though they may present themselves in a manner that I personally do not agree with, but I am a professional in sessions first before I am my own individual person. So I have to recognize when my biases are taking place during sessions, and I have to be very self-aware. So what happens when I notice personal biases being extra strong during, say, for example, a certain client, then I would talk it out, reflect on it with my peers, with my supervisors, so that I won't allow these biases to affect me in, say, following sessions. And I would say that it got better after a few years in the field, but I will still recognize that these biases will still take place every now and then.
Secondly, the second issue would definitely be informed consent. So that would mean that how consent may look like in the case of an individual versus with a child and the parents would look different. Informed consent, whether it includes any recorded content, meaning do I record the patient or the client in the session? And how do I use the recorded data that I have? How do I keep notes of the session? All this will be included in the informed consent. So I think one struggle would be that maybe some practitioners will find it difficult to go through the entire informed consent, which leads to problems eventually. With children, there is no concept of informed consent, but we opt for assent, A-S-S-E-N-T. So what it means is that parents are the ones that will give the consent because they will be the legal guardians of children. But children are minors. They will then need to understand the concept of how confidentiality works. So they also need to know that things that, for example, things that they say the parents would have the right to know what is being shared during therapy sessions. If things are not being shared, parents will need to know why. And how much should a practitioner actually share about what the children say with parents. You need to understand what's the difference between risky behaviors and harmful behaviors. So how do you sort of manage that is an issue that probably needs to be dealt with very delicately. When you're a legal adult and you sign an informed consent, we do not share any information with family members or employers. So even if family members or employers call in, we will not even acknowledge whether this person is a client or a patient. So confidentiality is maintained this way.
The confidentiality and privacy bit, we have to keep our clients' information, what they share during the sessions, confidential, unless, of course, that there are any form of harm that was posed during the session. If there are any harm that will be directed towards our clients or a third party, then we will have to break confidentiality, but otherwise we are not allowed to share any information. But there are certain times when family members of my clients or bosses in a corporate setting, colleagues, friends, they would ask, they might be worried because of this confidentiality, we are not allowed to reveal anything. So it's having to explain to them why it is important to have this confidentiality in place, why it's important to have this trust, to have this safe space for my clients to be able to share what they want during the sessions. Most of the time they will get it, but for some, I had some family members who are extra worried. They would ask over a few sessions again and again whether it's possible for me to tell them bits of information about my client. Of course, I have to repeat my stance again and again until they understand. So this was extra hard for me in my early days as a trainee, but now it has come more naturally.
The second example is confidentiality. Obviously, confidentiality is important, but when you work in a system, Like specifically for me, this foster care system, because I'm not just working with the client, I'm working with their care coordinators, their social workers. What can I tell their care coordinator during treatment team? Because the treatment team is to help, say, client, right? Is to collaborate and all. And I had a situation come up where, the teen was like, don't add this to your progress note. And I'm like, that's not how it works, As I did tell his caseworker, I told her, I was like, so I found myself in a position, I can't tell you anything because he doesn't want me to, but I can tell you that he's safe. He's not going to hurt himself or someone else.
So sometimes you may be tempted, as I think clinicians may be tempted to see both husband and wife or work together with both parents and also the parents, family members. But I think multiple relationships have to be handled carefully because they also need to be certain that confidentiality is kept and there are no complications. Therefore, usually the best way is not to have multiple relationships and to avoid having any conflicting interests.
I had a client's guardian. I was just talking to her about scheduling, and all of a sudden she goes, do you like grapes? I have a few grapes in the car. Would you like some? And so I had to catch myself, because if this was just a normal friend, it would be like, oh, sure, you want to give me grapes? Of course. But then I had to catch myself and be like, oh, wait. I'm a clinician right now. She's not my friend. Let's just kindly decline.
Now, let's take a look at the public survey responses. A total of 56 individuals participated in our survey, which included both multiple-choice questions and open-ended questions. The goal of this survey was to assess public awareness and perceptions of the importance of ethics and professional conduct within psychology and workplace settings.
The majority of participants in this survey were between the ages of 35 and 44. Most held a diploma or a bachelor's degree as their highest level of education, and 91.1% identified as students pursuing further studies. When asked about professional ethics in psychology, most participants emphasized protecting client confidentiality. For familiarity with ethics, the most common rating was 3, 33.9%, indicating a moderate understanding. When asked about the importance of ethical standards in psychological practice, 53.6% of participants rated them as extremely important. Additionally, 71.4% believed that most psychologists today adhere to these ethical standards. Regarding trust, 75% of participants said they trust psychologists to keep personal information confidential. When asked which ethical responsibility is most important, most chose respect for clients' rights, dignity, and confidentiality. For the open-ended question, how would you respond if you became aware of unethical behavior from a colleague? Some participants said they would talk to the colleague and remind them to do the right thing. Others would observe first and report to the right authority if the issue was serious. A few mentioned they would avoid getting involved to stay out of trouble. Some participants said they would discuss the issue with a superior and handle it carefully to protect the company's reputation. Others would seek clarification first, and if unresolved, follow ethical guidelines and report it to uphold integrity and standards. Some participants said they would try to talk to the colleague and encourage change, and if that failed, report the issue to our. Others would observe the person's actions, offer help, and gather facts before deciding on the next step. Addressing unethical conduct requires care, responsibility, and a strong commitment to integrity. Ethics should guide us not only in our work but in every part of our lives. When we choose to act with honesty and uphold the right values, we build trust, strengthen our communities, and create a better, more ethical world. Thank you for watching.